Welcome to Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and me, Jim Cunningham.
Hey, Jim, we're starting out by laughing.
Yeah, good start. And laughter is good. It turns out laughter is the best medicine.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
Who taught you that?
Reader's Digest as a kid. My parents used to get the Reader's Digest. In fact, I was always very good at the vocabulary.
Yes, it pays to increase your word power, doesn't it?
Yes, it pays to increase your word power. That really does. But there are a couple of stories. One, a Ray Bradbury story that I tracked down and made a copy of out of Reader's Digest because I couldn't find it anywhere else. But
now, did you actually also get the Reader's Digest condensed books that they would put out from time to time, where they did abridgments of?
Yeah, we didn't really do that. We like to read our books in their entirety.
Yeah, so did we.
I don't trust anybody that wants to edit a book on me, except you, of course.
Well, yeah, but it's my book, so I'm allowed. Anyway, speaking of books, this is the Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, episode, 517?
That's correct.
Season 5, episode 17. Today, we're going to chat with a really fun guy. Anyone with the name John, I'm going to like immediately. But John Sturk is a fascinating guy. I reached out to him because he, as with all the people, they keep popping up on the socials. And he's just, he worked for Fun Incorporated. He's one of the co-founders of the Chicago Magic Lounge. The reason that I originally wanted to talk to him, and it did become part of this interview, was that he was the 107th national president of the Society of American Magicians around 2023, 2024, somewhere in there. Plus, he also has something that we are finding to be more and more important to being a good magician on stage is he has an improv background and also a music background.
Yeah, the improv and music background caught me off guard, took me by complete surprise, but so cool. He's got a skill set that I greatly admire. Magic, organization, the president, and he's a musical director, which as an improv guy, I couldn't be more impressed with what he has done. And John's early interest in performing, John Sturk, not you, John, first focused on being a stand-up, and then he stumbled into acting, and he certainly got a passion for performing, playing none other than Paddington Bear. I had heard somewhere that you mentioned writing an essay in grade school, second grade, third grade, about wanting to be a stand-up comedian. And that's at that point in my life, I certainly wasn't thinking like that. So it's interesting to me that you were.
Yours was about being a ballerina, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Whose isn't?
Yeah.
How did that interest in performance evolve into a passion for magic?
I always loved stand-up comedy and performing. And when I was in the second grade, I was tapped to be the lead in our class play. I was Paddington Bear.
Nice.
And that really set the passion for performing. But it wasn't until I was much older, until I was like a sophomore in college, that I got the magic bug.
So there had been no magic up to that point?
I had liked magic, and I think I got a magic set for a birthday or Christmas or something, but it didn't really take a hold because in high school I did a little bit of drama and I did radio. My high school had a radio station, and I did news reporting, and I hosted a jazz program. It was I was a student during the 2000 election. This was Bush v. Gore. And I grew up in suburban Detroit. Michigan was and still is a battleground state. So we had a lot of candidates coming through my town. And I really, really, really thought I would be able to get an interview with either Bush or Gore. And I came really close. The closest I got was I got to go to a Dick Cheney rally in my hometown, and I got to ask him a question during the press scrum when he was in my town. So I got really close.
That is close.
Yeah. So magic didn't come along until I was a sophomore at Michigan State.
So to to steal from what was it, Jay Marshall? Yeah, Jay Marshall, who said you wasted the first 18 years of your life.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I came around to Magic when I was a sophomore at college, and I came across a Magic club in East Lansing. That was an IBM club, and I got involved with it. I found a few mentors there who started to coach me and eventually started tossing me their overflow gigs. Hey, John, you want to do a birthday party this Saturday for $100? Oh, yeah, I'll do it. Absolutely. And started going to conventions, being about 2 hours away from Colon, Michigan, the magic capital of the world.
Yeah.
With the home of the Abbott's Magic Company. So my first visit to Abbott's was for their small springtime close-up convention, as opposed to their big Magic Week festival they have in the summer. I entered the one-trick contest. I won first place.
Hey.
And my first try, and I thought, boy, this magic stuff is easy. And they invited me to the get-together that summer, and the rest is history.
What a great path to find yourself on, to be so close there. I think, Jim, wasn't it David Williamson who talked about being dropped off there?
Yeah. Just dropped
and
off.
the people that he met there kind of shaped him. Who did you run into? Who were early inspirations or heroes?
One of the first guys I ran into was Hank Morehouse, who is maybe not a familiar name to people outside the magic world, but he was a past president of the SAM. He was also sort of the organizer and booker for many conventions, including the Abbott's Get-Together. And Hank ran the conventions. After I won first place in this contest, he said, "Oh, why don't you come and perform in the Get-Together this summer?" "Oh, okay, Hank, whatever you say." So I did, and the next year, I was graduating from college, from Michigan State. Didn't really have any hard plans for what to do. And Hank had referred me for this gig in northern Michigan in Mackinac City.
Well,
Now, for those of you who know your Michigan geography, you may know Mackinac Island, which is a small island that you must reach by ferry between the upper and lower peninsulas. Mackinac City is the town on the mainland on the very tip of the lower peninsula where the bridge connects to the upper peninsula. So that's where I was, at this outdoor shopping mall. I did 6 shows a day, 7 days a week for 3.5 months.
wow.
And you get really good at those 5 tricks
Yeah.
when you do it that much. And that gig was thanks to Hank. So later that summer, get-together time is coming, and he calls me up and he says, "Hey, you want to take a couple days off to come to Abbott's and be in the contest?" Well, okay, Hank, whatever you say. So I asked for a couple days off. That it wasn't in my contract, but they're like, "Yeah, sure, it's fine. You've been working pretty hard without a day off, so go ahead, take a few days." So I went down and won first place in the contest again.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Wow.
This continued to give me a false sense of security. So after I finished up that summer, I spent another year working just around Lansing in temp jobs and doing a few birthday parties here and there. When I applied for a job in Chicago in 2007 to work at Fun Incorporated, which is America's largest magic manufacturer. If you've heard of Royal Magic or ever had a Royal Magic set, it was made in Chicago.
I did not know that.
That's right.
Fun Incorporated.
The guy that owned the company and another guy that worked the company, I met them through Abbott's. So when I was, in a desperate situation, just spraying resumes everywhere I could, I thought I'd throw one in here to Chicago. One of those, I'll never get it, but the worst they could say is no, I'll just send one in.
It never hurts to ask. That's if there's one lesson I've learned in my entire life, well, 99% of the time, it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
So I sent him my resume, and I put Hank Morehouse down as a reference. And the owner of the company, who had owned the company for 30 years, his name was Graham Putnam. And Graham was a regular at Abbott's and a very close friend of Hank Morehouse's, which I didn't know. So Graham invites me to have a first interview in a couple months during the Abbott's Get-Together, where we just had lunch in the diner. And he invited me a couple weeks later to come for an interview in Chicago. And I got the job, moved to Chicago in November of 2007.
And that's where you still live?
And I'm still here. That's right.
Well, that's good. That's a great story. I enjoyed every minute of that.
Now that seems like a very straight path, but I know, in addition to magic, you're also doing improv, you're also doing music. What is your background in improv and your background in music, and how have those disciplines helped shape your work?
It's strange how all of those things came together. The usual line in my show is, I'm running out of skills to monetize.
Jim, I think you need to adopt that.
So I need business cards with that on it.
So moving to Chicago, I didn't know too many other people. So I started taking improv classes at the Second City. Because I loved improv. I loved that TV show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? The old ones and the new ones. And I loved it was just another avenue to perform and do comedy. And I figured I could really take the skills from improv and apply them to magic and to improve my magic. And it worked. It really did. I think it took my magic up at least 2-letter grades.
How do you think it did that? And I know we had Matt Donnelly on last season, and he talked about, his background was, I think, entirely in improv before he became a musician. And he talked about how it allowed him to just move on. When something didn't work, you just move on. It's gone. Keep moving. How did that help you?
I think that is definitely part of it. But another part of it is just being open to new paths that you didn't expect. See, in improv, the rule is yes and, to agree and to build onto your scene partner. We, as close-up magicians especially, but also stand-up magicians, whenever we have a spectator involved, we have a new scene partner. And they will sometimes take us in directions we did not expect, but we should be open to those because they can create new scripts and new ideas and new jokes that you didn't conceive of before. One of the great magicians from the UK, Terry Seabrook, performed in these working man's clubs, and they were very rowdy, bawdy places. He developed so much new material just from listening to his audience.
Mm-hmm.
New scripting, new jokes. So the improv taught me how to do that and gave me the flight hours that I needed to be able to adapt that to magic.
Now, I see a keyboard behind you to your left, I think. How does music play into this evolution?
Well, I started playing in the 3rd grade. I started taking piano lessons. I had really wanted to be a saxophone player, but my parents convinced me to take piano first. We had a neighbor lady across the street who taught piano, so I started lessons there. And apparently, I progressed very quickly through all the workbooks. Oh, we've got to buy another one? Yeah, he finished it already. So I played all through high school with private lessons. I auditioned for music school and didn't get accepted. So I took a different path, and I went into majoring in political theory and journalism at Michigan State. My thought was to be campaign staffer or a political reporter, eventually a congressman. We'll get there at some point.
Yeah,
there's still time. There's still time.
I can tell you this interview will neither help nor hurt.
Yeah. So the music came, sort of took a break while I was in college and when I first moved to Chicago. But while I was at Second City taking classes, I was introduced to the concept of the music director, the improvised music director. And I met a woman named Stephanie McCullough, who's still here on the scene, who I just sort of met in passing in a hallway. And I said flippantly, "Oh, yeah, I play piano." "Really? You could make bank." She lied. So I started taking piano lessons and just sort of to get back into shape again. So I had 2 piano teachers, one who was teaching me jazz theory and technique, and the other who was teaching me the improv side of it. And before long, I was working, getting paid to do improv, which almost nobody else I knew was getting paid to do improv. That's just sort of how it's taken off. And I've been doing that professionally as a side hustle for 15 years.
Nice.
So Jim, we're going to dig into you for just a second because you have a background as an improv performer. And I believe you worked with more than one musical director while you were on stage.
That's true.
From a performance standpoint, Jim, what is that musical director adding to what you guys are trying to do on stage?
I think so much, and it goes largely unnoticed if they're very good at what they do, but they keep they help keep the ball in the air, and they can add so much. And the really good ones that I have worked with can feather in stuff that it makes us as performers laugh, and the audience as well. And they're not, no focus goes on them, but they're so, like, I'm thinking of Drew Jansen or Steve Schabel or Peter Gerten, all of them, Kevin Dutcher, who I work with still, can feather in stuff that is just brilliant, and will, even if the audience isn't aware of it, we're hearing it and laughing.
Our goal as music directors is to support and enhance the emotional undertones of whatever the actors are doing. If we're drawing too much attention to ourselves, we're not doing the job right, because we're supposed to support and enhance their choices. There is a heavy-handedness that can come with music directors if we're, given that liberty to really move things more. But our goal is just to support and enhance whatever it is that they're doing. So we do that very subtly, and then it builds and builds, just like an improv scene, yes-anding whatever the actors are up to, and we have a big conclusion.
It's a skill set that I have absolutely no aptitude for, but an incredible appreciation of that ability to support and enhance, because it really does make an enormous I mean, when you watch a movie, you know that there's constantly music playing to support what's going on, but you're not consciously, you're focused on whatever the scene and the actors, and you're not conscious of that music that is supporting and carrying, in some cases, the emotion of the scene. So I have a great respect for it, and what a terrific addition, skill set that you have for the magic that you do. So good for you. Good.
If I'm able to find it, I'll throw it in the show notes. There's a great video on YouTube of the final award scene from the original Star Wars, A New Hope, in which it shows them coming in either to no music or to inappropriate music. I think it might be no music. And you see, without the music, there's nothing going on in the scene. Yeah. There's nothing.
Yeah, it's just people standing around.
Yeah.
And then they walk in and get some medals.
Yeah. And the music just totally makes it. All right, I'm sorry, Jim, you go right ahead.
Well, I'm going to just say, I'm going to give a shout out to my son, Jake, who as a very little kid, and I'm talking 2 maybe, was homesick from preschool, and he and I were watching, I think, Little House on the Prairie, which was a favorite of my wife's. And the scene is Pa Ingalls kind of walking in the forest, and we're watching it, and suddenly the music shifts, and my little 2-year-old son says to me, "Uh-oh, something bad is going to happen." And I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Listen to that music. It's scary." And then a snake appears. So it does, as adults, we sort of have been so used to it that we don't notice it. But it was, I always think of that moment that my little 2-year-old son was able to, make a judgment call based on something that I wasn't even aware of anymore.
Music and magic have gone together for a very long time. If you look at any of the Golden Age magicians, they brought orchestral scores with them when they toured the vaudeville houses. Of course, we've seemed to have gotten away from that. Yeah. Probably expense, but I just have been trying to sort of bring an element of music back to magic. I play the organ for the Abbots Get Together. I took over that position from a lady named Wilma Wrench, who she would play the overture before each evening show during the Get Together festival. And occasionally she would play for magicians' acts on stage. Oh. She was very famous for playing for Harry Blackstone Jr. Another great Chicago magician, Jay Marshall, performed famously with Lefty, his glove puppet. And Jay Marshall, he passed away in 2004, the first year I went to the Abbots Get Together. So I never got to meet Jay personally. But since I moved to Chicago, I have gotten to know his son, Sandy, who still owns and operates Magic Inc., the last brick and mortar magic shop in Chicago. And I've talked to so many of the old timers in Chicago with great J. Marshall stories. But I didn't get to play If I Had My Way on the piano for Lefty until in 2019, we celebrated the centennial of J. Marshall's birthday, along with the centennial of our Society of American Magicians Assembly in Chicago. Both started in 1919. So we had a centennial celebration, and we got Sandy to perform Lefty, and I got to play the piano for it. So I finally got to play piano for Lefty.
That is awesome. You bring up the Society of American Magicians, and that was going to be my next question. How did you first get involved with that society?
Yeah, particularly since you mentioned early on you were an IBM guy.
Yeah, right.
That's right. In Michigan, we have mostly IBM clubs. There's a few SAM assemblies in Michigan, but they're usually joint assemblies. So it's a combined IBM and SAM club, which is fine. It happens all the time. But when I moved to Chicago, we have an IBM, we have an SAM, we have a couple of independent clubs. And when I first moved here, I joined all of them just because I needed some friends. I didn't know anybody in this new town. And so it got to the point where they started asking me to teach. And I didn't feel comfortable with that because I was, 26, 27, and I didn't feel like I knew enough to be teaching. So I stepped away from clubs for a little bit. And when I got back to the point where I felt like I had something to say and something I wanted to give back to magic, I looked around and I saw that the SAM at the time, our Chicago SAM assembly, was the weakest of the clubs. They had a low attendance. The guy who had been the president for 10 years. It was way too long. He was burnt out. And I thought to myself, I think I can fix this. I had started a magic club at Michigan State when I was a student. That actually grew pretty well while I was there. And then as soon as I left, it just sort of folded. But I knew I could take this SAM assembly to the next level. I wanted to because it needed my help, and it was the oldest of the assemblies in Chicago. So I really wanted to build it up. And within 3 years, we had gone from about, 6 to 8 people attending to 25 people attending on a regular basis. We had won some recruitment awards from the National Association, and then I started going to my first SAM convention in Indianapolis in 2016. And I finally got to see the whole breadth of this organization that was the oldest magic association in the world, that was more than just the four walls of the church meeting room that we used in Chicago. And I got to see the whole breadth of it. And I thought, wow, this is a way for me to give back to magic that's given me a lot.
And then you moved on to become the national president in 2023?
That's right. So I sort of climbed the ladder for the next few years. I served as the regional VP for the Midwest for a couple years, national second VP, national first VP, president-elect, and then I became the national president in 2023.
So this is all practice for your congressional career.
I was just thinking that same thing.
Yeah.
He's continually being elected to office. What's
well, it helps that nobody ran against me for any of those things. So I just want to point that out.
Running unopposed is never a bad thing. Tell us a little bit about that experience of being the 107th national president of the Society of American Magicians. Am I correct in saying the first president was Harry Houdini?
Unfortunately, no. He was not the first president, but he came in a little bit later. But he was our longest serving president from 1918 until his death in 1926. And he did more than anybody else to grow our assembly. It was during his administration that we started having chapters that we call assemblies all over the country. So he chartered the first several assemblies. Number one is in New York, of course. That one's still going. Number 2, San Francisco. Number 3, Chicago.
Nice.
4, Philadelphia, and 5 was Detroit. So because of Houdini's popularity at the time, he was really at the top of his game as a touring performer. he would establish contacts with the local magic clubs wherever he went, and got them into to charter to become SAM affiliates.
Yeah. And now I love that, all of that. Of course, I'm a huge Houdini guy. But talk about your tenure as president of the SAM.
Well, we face the same type of issues and troubles that every other organization deals with. The Elks, the Masons, the Kiwanis, the Rotary. We're all looking to encourage the next generation of youngsters to be involved in our art. So my main job for the year was to go around to different assemblies, to different conventions, and just spread the good word of the SAM and what the benefits are. A lot of people think that our only benefit is the magazine, the MUM magazine, or they think their only benefit is just the local club where they go, where they live, if they're lucky enough to have a local club where they live, that is. So my job was to remind people or explain to people that we're so much more than a magazine. We're so much more than just your local club. We have virtual meetings that we do 3 or 4 times a month. All the videos are archived. We've created hundreds of hours of video content for people to watch on demand, and also preserved knowledge from magicians who aren't with us anymore. We have some amazing interviews with people like Max Maven and Eugene Berger, and all of that stuff is accessible to our members 24 hours a day.
If you are listening from home, go ahead, take your drink.
Take your drink. We mentioned Eugene Berger.
Exactly.
There are 2 clubs here in the Twin Cities that I know. There's Society of American Magicians and IBM, and I've gone to one meeting of each just because I thought I should get a sense of it. In going to the 2 different club meetings, they both had a different feel to them. The IBM one was better attended the night I went, and had a very serious divide between the young and the old. I mean, literally, the young guy sat on one side of the room and the old guy sat on the other side of the room, and there was an argument broke out about Robert's Rule of Order, and one of the younger guys was saying, "What are you talking about? Who is Robert? What are you talking about?" So, that was very interesting. But I'm wondering, John, from your point of view, what is the value of someone joining an organization like that? What as a magician are you going to benefit from?
I think in a couple of different ways. One is in-person mentorship is the most valuable that you can have. It just doesn't get replaced by the Zoom type of meeting. And secondly, there's the collaboration that you can get from in-person meetings. Hey, I've got a problem with this routine. Hey, I've got a solution to fix your problem. And you wouldn't have that instant access to information if you don't go. And third, just the other benefits that we offer, the hundreds of hours of video I mentioned, the 100+ years of MUM magazine that we have to research. I like reading and searching through old stuff. I was never that good at creating my own original material, but I was really good at finding old stuff that everybody else forgot about. And that's where I found it all. So the in-person is just always going to be better than the online or the virtual. You can test my hypothesis on that.
But that being said, it sounds like you guys are adapting to the digital age.
That's what I was going to ask about, too.
Got, online storage of these great interviews. Why do you think that's important to keep the organization going?
Well, we noticed that about half of our members were not members of a local assembly, which means that they weren't getting the full benefit of their membership. Having those in-person meetings is a membership benefit.
So you're saying on a national level, about half of the people who belong to the Society of American Magicians didn't have a local club.
That's right. So to them, the SAM membership was just like a magazine subscription to them. So in 2016, through the vision of John Midgley, he created what we call Assembly V 1.1, which is a monthly online meeting. And this is 2016. We're talking several years before Zoom. So we've been doing this online stuff for a very long time just to try to bring people together who didn't have other magicians in their community to pal around with.
That's great. We've talked to so many people. I'm thinking, Jim, of our friend Tyler,
Yeah.
who talked about when he was learning magic, it was a 2-hour drive to the closest magician that he knew. He didn't have that growing up, and he's done okay
Yeah. He's a
under
genius.
those circumstances.
Yeah.
But like you say, John, having a place you can go to just go, how does this work? What am I doing wrong?
What I love too about your books, John, is when you describe the accuracy of describing a magic shop culture, of being able to sit in the magic shop for a Saturday afternoon and just watch all the characters that come in and out. And I'm approaching the point where I'm going to be the magic shop sage who's just sitting around giving advice to people. It's only like 3 or 4 years off.
Yeah.
So it's coming very soon. I can feel it. But it's one of those features of a magic shop that each one should have.
It's racing toward you like a train, John.
Yeah.
I can't
Boom.
stop it. I can't stop it.
Yeah, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. I want to talk about the Chicago Magic Lounge if I can, because that is a pretty cool thing, and you are the co-founder of that.
Right.
Talk about your vision for that venue, and I can hypothesize about how it contributes to the magic scene in general, both in Chicago and nationally. But talk to us about the Chicago Magic Lounge.
Well, before I had started getting involved in the magic clubs again, I decided to form my own. And I called it the Session Club. And I just wanted to have a place that was inspired by the Long Beach Mystics, if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah, sure.
They were a club of youths who coached each other. So they used each other as directors to improve their magic, and then they would do a show. Well, I felt like I wasn't getting enough feedback from my magic from other places. So I decided to form a club in the back room at Magic Inc. They let me use the place once a month, and it was invite only, where I just invited people whose opinions I respected to come and coach me with my magic. We had done this for about a year, met every month. And after about a year, I said, we have been doing this for a whole year. We should just do a show. And we can do it right here in the back room at Magic Inc. They have done some shows there before. When another one of our members said, actually, I know a guy who's opening a theater and they need programming. So why don't we talk to them about doing a show over there? So that was in December of 2014. Then the place opened in March of 2015. We did our very first magic show, and we had kicked around the idea of what to name the show for a while, and we just sort of simplified it as much as we could. Chicago Magic, and the place looked like a lounge. So that's what we called it.
Could have been a factory, would have been Chicago Magic Factory.
Yeah, it could have been
Not a bad name either.
Yeah, maybe not. But when we got there, and the place looked very retro, it was very 1940s, 1920s aesthetic, and there was a grand piano next to the stage. And I thought, oh, you guys, this is perfect. Just let me play the piano for you. You trust me, you're going to love it. And so I became the music director of the Chicago Magic Lounge, as well as a performer. And because I had both feet in the magic world, where most of my colleagues didn't, I also became the director of magic operations for the first few years. So I did all the booking in collaboration with our leaders, but I made sure I performed it. I just wanted to perform once a month, just to keep my flight hours going. We sold out every show, every Thursday night, and the venue was so happy with it, they asked us to do a second night. So we started doing 2 nights a week. Then I remember the day very clearly. We were approached. I was performing that night, and a guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, are you guys looking for an investor?" And I said, "Well, I guess, but you want to talk to that guy over there. He handles the business." And lo and behold, the guy invested in our fledgling company, and we built a custom-made venue in Andersonville. Yeah, that opened in February of 2018, I believe it was. That was a custom 120-seat venue with a back room that seats about 40 and a front bar that had room for about 25 people. So throughout the whole process, we were talking about the golden age of Chicago Magic, venues like Schulian's, venues like the New York Magic Lounge, a little bit of magic, and the grand history of all of these of close-up magic in Chicago and how it vanished then for a good 40 years. But we wanted to pay tribute to that era and renew Chicago-style magic. And I worked there full-time for about a year.
It's a bucket list road trip that Jim and I
Absolutely
have
it is. Absolutely it is.
yet to fulfill. So, John, you came to magic late, but you have a pretty good sense of the magic community and magic history and the needs of performers. You guys were doing Zoom stuff and digital storage of information before it became really, really big with the pandemic. How do you think magic can remain relevant and captivate younger generations as we fall faster and deeper into this digital age?
Well, two things. One, I think, is accessibility. We want to make sure that these things are findable for the people who want it. You know, we have, like so many other databases, a paywall. So we have all the good stuff behind the paywall, but fortunately, it's not a very steep climb. Our annual dues are only $65 a year, and you get access to all this great info. But the second thing that I think we need to do, and I think there's still more work to do, is improving the visibility and diversity of the magicians that we spotlight. I always think of the story that Whoopi Goldberg would tell about seeing Nichelle Nichols, Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, and seeing a woman of color on television who wasn't a domestic worker. She was an officer. She was the communications officer. Maybe I can do that too. Well, it's that sort of visibility is still really important. So I tried to give a spotlight to people who didn't usually get the spotlight. And I hope we can continue to do that. Even though I'm not currently the president anymore, I'm still very much involved with the SAM. I'm the marketing co-chair, so I'm working on the social media stuff that we are putting out, the stuff that we do for our website. So we're hoping to continue the growth and expand the tent, as it were.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk a final question here. And for me, it's that we have aspiring magicians listening to this podcast on a fairly regular basis. And they're just starting out, some of them. What kind of advice would you give to, doesn't matter how old they are, if they're just starting out in magic, what's the advice you would tip them?
Read as much as you can. All the good stuff is in books. If you see a lot of your friends gravitating towards a certain trick, try not to do the same thing that everybody else does. Be yourself. Put your own personality and your own spin on everything that you do, and perform as much as you possibly can for real live people.
That is advice we've heard again and again and again. And even from me, I've said it. Perform as much as you possibly can for real people. The times I've talked about doing Wave at author events where I do it 20 times in a row in an hour, you just cannot help but get better.
Yeah, largely, I think that flight time is the key to the benefits program. Yeah. But I also liked what he said, kind of in passing. I've never been really good at creating my own material, but I can go into a book that's long out of print and find something that people have forgotten about. And there's so much out there that people have forgotten about, that what's old is new again. If you just look around, David Devant, I'm reading one of his books right now, and I stumbled across a routine and thought, wow, that's really cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
Well, I've
clever.
talked about the version of Cards Across that Suzanne taught me that she was going to teach you. You guys ever get around to that?
We never got to it, but I think there's a fair chance I'm going to learn Cards Across and use it in my Dickens Christmas Carol.
Well, and I said, how'd you come up with this? And she said, I didn't. It's just two separate things that I saw in Tarbell that when I put them together, I went, oh, that'd work for Cards Across. So when he says that all the good stuff is in books, I think he's onto something there. And also the idea of avoid doing the popular tricks.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just look like the same as everybody else. And so there's some truth to that.
Well,
Obviously.
we ran into that at Sunday Night Magic, where there'd have to be a quick confab before the show. Who's doing what?
Right.
Well, you're going to do the rope, then I won't do the rope. I mean, it's similar, or so they tell me, to what the Catskills comedians would talk about before going on, because there were jokes that everybody did. And they'd say, "Oh, you're going to do that, then I won't do that one, and then I'll do the mother-in-law version instead," because they would just share these things back and forth. And you just don't want to be the magician who comes on realizing that everything you're about to do was just done.
It reminds me of that little one-act Fringe Festival show we did, You Suck.
Yes.
Where the comedian, to get back at another comedian, did the first 5 minutes of his routine.
Yep.
before he
That's
came
in
on
our
stage.
George Campbell interview. If I remember, I'll throw a link into that.
Very funny stuff.
I've loved George's story. And the poor comic to this day does not know why he bombed so badly with material that he knew was strong, with the audience glaring at him because they all thought he was a thief.
It's all good stuff. Good.
Anyway, great to meet and chat with John. Listen to what he says, perform as much as possible for real live people, because that's just how you're going to get better. And I know it's hard to find those real live people sometimes,
They're out there.
but they're out there. You just need to do what Noah Sony did. Go back to
Yeah,
school
I was just thinking of Noah.
and become the guy at the front desk at the dorm, where you have people coming by you all day long.
I like it. If you
Well,
can't
okay, you
front
like that,
desk,
but let's talk about something you might love, because it is
an odd number. That means
not a-
I go first.
because
Yeah.
you're an odd number. I say it every time. Yeah.
Ah.
What do you love this time around?
I love a brand new documentary about Billy Joel called "And So It Goes."
Sometimes it's alien to me, this guy Billy Joel. I don't know who that is or what that is.
Sing us a song, you're the piano man.
I'm reminded of it when I go walk on the street.
You've got us feeling alright.
Oh, right, I'm that guy.
Back then, his whole life was the band.
I wanted to put together a group of New York musicians.
They were a bunch of hooligans from Long Island.
My own history as a musician started with me hearing classical music. Uptown Girl. It could have been a Mozart piece.
Are you the man singing Uptown Girl?
That's me. Here I am dating this supermodel.
Me? I'm from Hicksville.
Billy's melodies are better than mine.
He had a great sense of drama. He had the magic.
And I don't know. Have you watched it, or is it surfaced in your world?
It has surfaced. I will say that I got as far as well into Christy Brinkley, and then kind of went, there's still another hour and a half left. I'm going to have to come back to this, because that was part 2.
Yeah. Right.
And but fascinating up until then. And what talk about a guy you want to hang out with.
No kidding. I am I wouldn't say a rabid Billy Joel fan, but how can you not be a Billy Joel fan if you happen to grow up somewhere in the 70s and 80s where he was pervasive? So I liked him, and I just thought, I'll give this a watch, and I'm fascinated by it. And it's produced by Tom Hanks's company, Playtone, which does really good work. Band of Brothers, Masters of the Air, the Pacific series. They do good work straight across the board. And this is fascinating. And the thing that I saw Billy Joel in concert when he came through here, I'm going to say in 86 or 7. And what you kind of don't realize is the man can do 2+ hours and never play anything that isn't a mega hit.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming. So I really am enjoying the series, not to mention the fact, but I'm going to anyway, that some other people are in it that I really like. Jackson Browne does some commentary on it.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if I've mentioned how much I
don't think
enjoy
his name's come up
the
yet.
music of the Boss, but Springsteen's in there. In fact, Springsteen even said Billy's melodies are much more elegant than mine.
Yeah.
just I'm really enjoying it. So, and I'm about where you are right now, into the Christie Brinkley. But the great part about it is, it's you can just stop it and pick it up after everybody goes to bed the next night, which is what I'm doing. The new dog and I are enjoying, and so it goes, the Billy Joel documentary,
And while you're watching television, I don't know. I know this. You can find episodes on YouTube. We're switching now to my thing that I love.
Yeah. I felt the transition there.
This is not a document. Well, it is sort of a documentary, kind of. In looking back at the last couple, we've talked a lot about travel on this show from time to time. In fact, I think the last time around, I recommended the Trip movies, which are going to different countries and all that. And there is a series that was on for years, and I think it's on again now with a different host. But there's an actor-writer named Richard Ayoade, who, if you ever watched the IT Crowd, he was the really, in a nerdy environment, he was the most nerdy character there. But he's a wickedly funny writer and performer. And he had a show called Travel Man.
Hello, I'm Richard Ayoade, the internationally regarded face of Gadget Man. But for the next half hour of mold-shattering television, this face is going to pack its oversized bag and fly to foreign shores. Watch as I radically alter my persona.
I'm briefly quelling my fear of leaving home in order to explore warmer climes. My stated goal is to show you the component parts of a triumphant weekend away.
Oh dear.
With the minimum of minutage, coin and faff.
We're here, but should we have come?
He would take someone semi-famous in the entertainment business, and he would go away with them for a weekend to someplace that wasn't home. And because they live in the UK, you can go someplace different very quickly. You can go to Germany very quickly. You can go to all these places very quickly. And so he would, in documentary form, they would follow them over 24 or 48 hours in this city, doing the tourist stuff you probably should do if you're going to go there. And then commenting on it. And for Americans, you'd recognize people like Paul Rudd, Rebel Wilson, John Hamm, Eddie Izzard. But he also had a slew of British comedians, which I'm as familiar with or more than some of, I'm familiar with all those names. I'm very familiar with all of them because they all appear on the British panel shows. But anyway, every episode is about 30 minutes long. It covers their 2 days in the city. You get to see all the things you probably should look at when you go to that city. We just recently watched the Budapest episode because we're going there next year. And it's a great way to kind of get your feet wet about somewhere you're thinking of going, or just the entertaining prospect of Richard, who is a bit of a cranky traveler. He's not an accidental tourist, but he likes things the way he likes them, and is very quick-witted about it. Just seeing his reaction to the different sites they hit. So every episode just zips right along. They're really fun. It's called Travel Man. I'll have a link in the show notes. You can find a couple on YouTube and see if it's what you like.
Well, I will absolutely do that. I love to travel, and I love funny people. And listen, John Hamm, there's a lot of people that you mentioned, right? Did you say Eddie Izzard?
Eddie Izzard did one. If you're into British comedians, just about every top British comedian at some point or another traveled with him, including Chris Dowd, who he was in IT Crowd with. And as long as you're on YouTube, search around for Richard Ayoade on panel shows. He's so quick and so funny. I'm just a big fan, and I'm a big fan of that show, Travel Man.
All right. I'm going to find it. I'm going to watch it. Thanks to the show notes. But let's get down to business. What do you say?
Sure.
Last time I read chapter 16, so before I launch into chapter 17, I want you to just give us a quick recap of chapter 16.
Sure. That all took place in Highgate Cemetery while they're exhuming the body. And that's really the key thing that happened there. The rest of the group is back in the bar listening as Eli narrates over his phone. And they've got the body out of the grave, and they just need to determine that it is, in fact, who they think it is. And then when everyone else is heading off, Eli says he has to settle some business with Jake North. And that's where we dive right into chapter 17.
Chapter 17. 15 minutes, Mr. North. Yeah, okay. Jake's response to the assistant stage manager's short statement was mumbled and morose. She looked over at me, and I nodded, as if to say, I'll make sure he gets on stage on time. Or perhaps the nod meant, yes, he is sort of a jerk, isn't he? The annoyed head shake she gave in response told me all I needed to know about her relationship with the play's current star. I had quickly discovered that while the onstage antics at A Pretty Taste for Paradox were all high-energy fun and fancy, life backstage was anything but. From the moment I had arrived at the stage door for my scheduled pre-show meeting with Jake, everyone I'd encountered seemed edgy and annoyed, either with the production as a whole or with my old high school chum, or both. Upon my arrival at his dressing room door, Jake's enthusiastic greeting was cut short when I held up the lecture notes Liam, the kid at Davenport's magic shop, had given me. He stared at the photocopied booklet for a long moment before taking it from me and stepping back into his dressing room. I followed, letting the door swing shut behind me. Jake sat heavily in his chair in front of the makeup mirror, letting out a long sigh as he absently paged through the pamphlet. I debated whether I should stay standing and present a position of power or sit down as a symbol of appeasement. The arrival of the assistant stage manager for her short announcement about the impending start of the show pushed me away from the closed door, so I split the difference and sat on the arm of the worn couch on the other side of the small room. Do you know what the expression dead to rights means? Jake finally asked, looking up at me for the first time. I think it means being caught red-handed, I said, with some authority, although in reality I don't think I had ever used the expression and was a bit fuzzy on its actual meaning. Yeah, that's what I thought, Jake said, setting the brochure on his makeup table. It's in one of my lines in the play, but I hardly ever say it because I'm not entirely sure what it means. I considered asking why there were no dictionaries on his planet, but decided this might start us down a path of hostility I was really trying to avoid. I was also curious about his casual relationship with the text of the play, but felt it was a discussion best left for another time. He picked up the lecture notes again. Sorry about this, he said quietly. You've got me dead to rights. Thanks, but the more times you apologize, the less meaning it has, I said, thinking back to our tense, mediated conversation in Gareth Mackenzie's office at the Magic Circle. He nodded in agreement. It's my fault. I never should have tried to do the whole magician thing. My experience on that vomit wheel certainly proved that. It's like that Houdini quote. I raised an eyebrow at this, as Jake's grasp of magic history had never been what one might call robust. Houdini quote? I repeated. You know, about actors being magicians being actors or something. You mean a magician is an actor playing the part of a magician? I said. That's the one. That was Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, not Houdini. Whatever, he shrugged. Being the famous actor who does magic all the time is hard. They always want something new. It never ends. Everywhere I go, it's got to be something new. And once you do a trick on TV, forget about it. You can't use that one again. It's back to the frickin' drawing board. I smiled, in spite of myself, recognizing Jake's complaint as being a common one among genuine magicians. So I'm always paying a fortune to hire some guy to teach me something new, or busting the bank to buy some fresh illusion, or being forced to use whatever's at hand, he said, once again gesturing at the lecture notes as if they were Exhibit A in a courtroom trial. So you're an actor playing the part of a magician playing an actor playing a magician? I suggested. Jake nodded. That's about it. And I gotta tell you, I'm exhausted. Well, I'm here to offer you a lifeline, I said, reaching into my coat pocket. Not that you deserve one. I pulled out a folded sheet of paper and handed it to him. Jake took it and opened it, sighing as he did. What's this, a summons? He asked. his voice tinged with resignation. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, then remembered who he was, and that feeling immediately vanished. It's a letter you're going to post on your website and your Facebook page, I explained, as I watched his lips move slowly as his eyes scanned the single sheet. It's telling your fans that you're retiring from magic. His lips formed the words retiring from magic, and I wasn't sure if he was repeating what I just said or if he just hit that portion of the short letter. "What does that mean?" he finally said. "Retiring from magic." "It means that you are no longer the famous actor who does magic. Now you're just the famous actor." He nodded at the concept and looked up from the note. "And if I don't post this?" I pulled another sheet of paper from my pocket. "Then I post this on my website, on the Magic chat boards, and as a full-page ad in Genie magazine, telling the world that you not only stole my effect, but that you went so far as to market it and charge for it, with photos and links to the evidence, which is, as we're both aware, abundant." I dramatically held up the folded sheet, which in reality was the hotel bill from the faulty towers Megan and I had checked out of a few days before, but Jake didn't need to know that. Jake sat quietly for a moment, then he sat back and once again sighed. For someone who was about to go on stage in a high-energy farce, he looked very tired. "Okay," he finally said. "That seems fair." Another long pause. I fought the impulse to fill the conversational void, but I soon lost that battle. "Well, at least you have this play to do," I offered, gesturing to the stage on the other side of his dressing room door. "They hate me here," he said, shaking his head. "Everybody in the cast hates me. I hate this play. I hate London." This was a surprising admission, so I felt the need to push further. "Why does the cast hate you?" Jake waved the question away as he got up and began to put on his missing costume pieces. A striped tie, a suit coat, a pair of cufflinks. "They're all a bunch of sticklers for saying every line in the damn script, like it's written in stone or something," he said as he started to put on the cufflinks. "I've always been great at ad-libbing, you know that, and they aren't, so it bugs them. I mean, where's the famous yes and attitude I kept hearing about in the theater? Yes and my ass is more like it." I was going to point out, while yes and was a staple of improvisational theater, it wasn't a frequent factor on the legitimate stage. But I was too intrigued to quibble. "You ad-lib? During this play? This mystery play?" I asked. "Sure," he said. "Toss in a new clue here and there. Spice it up. Keep people guessing." The cufflinks weren't behaving as planned, so he shoved his wrists in my direction. I gave him a "you've got to be kidding me" look, but it didn't register, so I dutifully began to insert the cufflinks into the cuffs of his starched white dress shirt. While I did that, he looked over at a handwritten list crookedly taped to the inside of the dressing room door. He leaned back to read it while I worked on the links. "Well, at least it looks like I'm the murderer tonight, so I've got that to look forward to." I glanced toward the list and then back at him. "What do you mean? You already know who the murderer is before the audience has ever voted?" He smiled his trademark wicked grin. "It's rigged," he said, adding an unnecessary wink. "I had them put it in my contract." "You had them put in your contract that you would be chosen as the murderer at every show?" I was beginning to get a more complete picture of why the cast hated him. He shook his head like I was talking nonsense. "I'm not an egomaniac," he said reassuringly. "I'm hardly ever picked as the murderer. Only like 9 out of 16 times. How did you land on that figure?" I had abandoned my work on the cufflinks. "Being the murderer 9 out of 16 times? I've got good lawyers," he said with a shrug, gesturing that I needed to finish up my work with the cufflinks as he had a tie to attend to. I said I wanted to be the murderer in just a little more than half of the shows. Give the other guys an occasional crack at it. I returned to the work, finishing up the left cufflink and starting on the right. 9 out of 16, I repeated softly. Well, that is just a little over half. Like I said, good lawyers. Cufflinks, tie, and suit coat were all finally in place when the assistant stage manager returned, swinging open the door to bark, "Places!" and then move quickly away to spread the word to the rest of the cast. I started to say my farewells, but Jake seemed to take no notice. He headed toward his backstage entrance. I gamely followed. He said, making no attempt to speak at a level more appropriate to the backstage area like everyone else was doing, I'm thinking instead of being the famous actor who is also a magician, I might have better luck being the famous actor who is also a singer. The guy who suddenly surprises everyone by putting out an album of his emotionally revealing but catchy hit songs. Nobody ever gets mad at a singer for doing the same song twice on television. Are you a songwriter? He shrugged. I have some poems, he said, but then a new thought hit him. Or I could up the ante and be the famous actor who also has his own band. Doing surprise gigs all over the place. Can you believe it? Jake North just showed up at the Caboose with his band. That sort of thing. I should look into booking a tour. Well, there might be more to it than that, I began, but he was off on another thought. Or, you know what? I could be the famous actor who plays poker. Go on one of those TV poker shows. And people will be like, hey, I didn't know he's also an amazing poker player. Well, sure, I began. Or here's a thought. You could be the famous actor who's also a philanthropist, using his newfound wealth to spread good works all over the world. He seemed to consider this for a moment, and then snapped his fingers in excitement. I'll be the actor who is also a stand-up comic, on the side. Edgy, but accessible. Doesn't it usually work the other way? They start as a comic and then get into acting? That's why this is brilliant. I was about to tell him I needed to leave, that I had to get up at an unnamed hour for an unspecified thing, but the assistant stage manager saved me. She yanked Jake away and set him in front of the door that would swing open in a few moments and place him on stage. Remember, she whispered, but loud enough even I could hear it. Your first line is, did anyone happen to see a man in a black coat ride by the house on a white horse? Black coat, white horse. Jake nodded disingenuously while the assistant stage manager held a hand to her headset awaiting instructions. Okay, she finally whispered. Stand by. I assumed stand by was going to be followed by its directional partner, go, but Jake made no such assumptions. Without waiting for the final cue, he pushed open the door and stepped on stage. His sudden arrival cut into an actress's speech, but I couldn't hear if she even attempted to complete her lines as the audience burst into wild applause at the arrival of the American star. Jake waited for the applause to die away, pausing a few seconds longer than necessary, perhaps thinking it might spontaneously regenerate. Once he was certain his arrival had been properly acknowledged, he stepped forward with his first line. Am I nuts, or did a horse just go past? This was greeted by nervous laughter from the audience. The assistant stage manager turned to me with a look so piteous it nearly broke my heart. Good thing none of the guns in the show are loaded, huh? I whispered in a lame attempt to cheer her up. Don't be so sure, she shot back, and then turned and headed toward her next backstage cue. As I sat on the subway headed back to Hampstead Heath, I tried to remember how many days it had been since I took this same trip from Leicester Square and a pretty taste for paradox to Lawrence Baxter's estate. 4 days? 5? Last time, Harry had been fresh from his weekend in jail, under suspicion in the stabbing death of the one-armed magician Oskar Korhonen. The eerie mentalist Boris had still been alive, but was only a couple hours away from his fateful cup of tea, and the freakishly skillful Spanish cardman Hector Hechizo was still several days away from his untimely and bloody end in a London hotel, which had led to Lawrence Baxter himself being brought in for questioning. This got me thinking about Harry's reaction to the play and his comments about the need for a mystery to be satisfying in order to succeed. This current mystery, I thought, was far from satisfying, with each new development, like the discovery of the suicide note and the disinterring of Archie Banks' body, adding little that was actually helpful. The correlations Harry and McHugh discovered between the murders and Banks' suicide note were fascinating, but did little to crack open the case. In fact, in my mind, they simply added another level of confusion. Not getting anywhere with this train of thought, I turned my attention to the lecture notes I still held in my hands. I wasn't sure why I grabbed them as I left Jake's dressing room. Paging through the photocopied brochure, I recognized immediately that, just like the training and the magic props he had paid handsomely for, Jake must have employed the services of a ghostwriter to create his lecture notes. And a pretty good ghostwriter at that, I thought, as I read through the explanation of the first effect. Intrigued, I turned to the write-up on my ambitious dog routine to see if the writer had captured the flavor and the nuances of the trick, such as they were. The unknown writer had done that and more. He presented the trick in clear, concise language, walking the reader through each phase and providing sharp direction at every turn. But the writer also added some thoughts on magic theory, which made the trick, and by extension me, sound brighter than I had any right to expect. The writer ascribed far more in-depth consideration to the routine than I had ever actually given it. He pointed out that the use of a surprising and stunning effect early in the trick, in this case, the realization the entire deck had mysteriously changed color, was designed to throw the audience off track as to where the illusion was actually headed. This, he suggested, was a psychological ploy in the style of masters like Ascanio and Ortiz. High praise for a little routine I had stumbled into when I accidentally lost track of where I was while performing a traditional, ambitious card routine for some drunken insurance underwriters. I reread the notes on my trick, and one sentence suddenly stood out, although I wasn't entirely certain why. In referencing the phase in the illusion where, from the audience point of view, the entire deck changes from red to blue, the ghostwriter had written, "It is important to remember one wrong piece of information can color the entire trick in the minds of the viewers." I think the writer might have just been playing with the word color there, but the overall concept jumped out at me, and I immediately tried to put it into the context of the current situation with Archie Banks and the murders. Was there a wrong piece of information coloring our perceptions of the entire case? I thought about all the pieces of information we'd gathered since Oscar's surprising death the previous Saturday night. The mysterious murderous chair, the poisoned tea bags, which may or may not have been switched with Boris's tea bags at the Baxter estate, the slow, bloody death of Hector, and the implication the murderer had an association with the medical industry. Archie Banks' bizarre suicide note and its gory prediction of each of the murders. And finally, the body of Archie Banks, or was it him, exhumed, skeletal, and still wearing the Magi's signature ring. Were any of these a wrong piece of information leading us seriously astray? And on what felt like a related note, why did I keep thinking about that horrible English breakfast I had on my first day in London? I wasn't even hungry, but for some reason, it kept popping into my head. I was still pondering this as I left the train station and made my way up the lane toward Baxter's estate, enjoying the cool night air. The moon was almost full, and provided more than enough light on the path. But that illumination paled by what I saw when I turned the corner toward the mansion. I was surprised to see both the inside and outside of the house were brightly lit up. The exterior illumination provided by the flashing lights from several police cars and an ambulance. The ambulance was just starting to pull away from the house as I broke into a run.
The ambulance is pulling away.
Yes, that's okay. Something bad has happened to someone in the house, and he's going to run up and find out who it is. And we'll find out who it is next time. But there's some interesting stuff in that chapter about Jake and what he's doing in that play, and how I think we've talked in the past about neither one of us like shows where the audience chooses who the murderer is, that it just always dampens the mystery, because you have to make it so broad.
Right, exactly. No, I'm not a fan of that. I like there to be one clear cut.
Yeah.
This is if anybody can do it, then what's the point? Although sometimes the journey it can
sometimes,
be enjoyable.
Sometimes, and it's clear that Jake is really not enjoying this whole process as much as he thought he would. And then on the way back to Baxter's house in the tube, Eli realizes that there must be a ghostwriter involved in the trick notes that Jake wrote up, because Jake's just not smart enough to have written them, particularly one line that stuck out to him that's important to remember, that one wrong piece of information can color the entire trick in the minds of the viewers.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of something, the quote we have at the beginning of the latest Eli Marks book, Twisting the Aces, in which it's something along the lines of Terry Pratchett saying, sometimes a magic trick is just having one more piece of information than everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll find out who that ambulance is going after next time. And next time, we're also going to revisit some thoughts from David K., a.k.a. Silly Billy.
And they're good thoughts. Anything he says is worth listening to. So we will, I hope, see you next time with Chapter 18 of The Linking Rings, and a great snippet, as John mentioned, from our chat with David K., a.k.a. Silly Billy.
Okay. See you then. Bye, everybody.
Take care, folks. Be kind to each other.
This has been Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and Jim Cunningham. Produced by Alberts Bridge Books at Grass Lake Studios. Find this podcast and all the books in the Eli Marks series at elimarksmysteries.com. That's ELIMARKS Mysteries.com. And thanks for listening.